What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, blues people? Um, let's see here. First, I want to know if y'all is here and can hear me. I always keep groovy. Let's see, what is this? Comments takes us a live comment from viewers will appear on screen. Oh wow, okay. We I don't know if we're gonna do that yet. Um Welcome to the show. Today we're part two. The blues is black sonic folklore, hard ground and high water. So what does that mean? We're discussing uh, environmental blues. We're discussing blues and class critique. We're discussing the blues of survival and struggle, right? So I got my notes. I got to, well, as and I'm gonna put this back up, but y'all know how it is. Sometimes I like to look at my people's first, then go into notes and things. So we're still in the process of celebrating Black Music History Month. Go to Jack Dappa Blues radio and TV YouTube channel for last week's episode. You can also find it on pretty much each and every, well, you can see down at the bottom, each and every streaming, right? That way you can, that way you can catch up with us, number one. And when I mean catch up with us, catch up with what we're discussing. And number two, I give you the history of Black Music History Month, which takes place in June. But its inception, the three brilliant minds who birthed the idea went to Jimmy Carter, implemented the idea, and then the very first event honoring Black Music History Month happened, I believe, at the White House during Jimmy Carter's presidency. I believe in 1977, if memory serves me correctly. So go back to last week's show for that. So we're celebrating this month. We're doing a series celebrating Black History Music Month, but we will be discussing the blues as Black sonic folklore. Today's part two, hard ground, high waters, which our conversation will be diving into the blues as witness to environmental crises and class struggle. Okay. So we're going to feature some lyrics from Charlie Patton, from Bessie Smith, from Blind Lemon Jefferson, and by Leadbelly. Okay. And I have a surprise for you all. I'll tell you in a couple of minutes. And we're going to explore how these songs about flood, drought, urban segregation, and the likes serve as a time capsule. So it gives you it's a document is oral Black ecological, economic, and emotional history through sound. Okay. Now, what I want y'all to leave with is these are more than blues, they're survival songs. I speak about we're not going to talk about protest songs right now. If you want to hear the episode about protest songs, you can go to the Jack Dappa Blues radio and TV YouTube channel through the live, and you can find that episode. Okay. But what I want you to leave with is the blues is more than just music, it is survival songs, it's testimonies of people shaped by both nature and the system that has failed us. We're going to talk about that, okay? In a hopefully grave detail, because the blues bear witnesses to the pressures of both nature and society. Okay, weather, how the catastrophes, hard labor, displacement, and segregation. So weather catastrophes, labor catastrophes, financial, economic catastrophes. And I guess we can also call that judicial, right? Catastrophes, because segregation, displacement was legal, right? So I told you who we were going to be discussing. I'm not going to play the songs yet, but soon, if not next week, possibly the following, we'll be able to have this engagement while I actually will be able to play the songs and I won't get striked. How? You will find out soon. That is the good news. Oh, another piece of good news, the new magazine, it's going to be out soon. Okay, I mean, we have it. I'm going to start mailing it out, and you can start buying it. We have some Bowling Green natives that written for it. Is written a word? Mr. Aaron Whitlow has a great article. Mrs. Casey Hammonds has a great article. We have other Kentucky natives, Michael L. Jones out of Louisville, Cheney Williams, the Pearlies. So keep a lookout for that. Okay. And we're still working on this festival. We would like to set it up here because Porter Parish Granger comes from Bowling Green. So, but before we go deeper into today's program and we talk about uh, Bessie Smith, Charlie Patton. And now, when I say talk about them, we're not necessarily speaking about them per se. More or less, the song, the words of the songs, and how those lyrics describe, define, and present environmental and class, we can say issues, right? But before we do that, I'm using this image because I always use images of old school uh, plantation and cotton picking and all types of things. I wanted to use a more urban environment picture that could be considered more modern. I will say this as I describe a couple of things that's going to help give context to our discussion. When I speak about blues ecology, when I speak about Dr. Clyde Wood's blues epistemology and development arrested, when I also speak about the New Deal and different uh, ideology systems and labor intensive issues that pretty much created the atmosphere that we're seeing with the tail end of it, I guess, playing out. There's the idea of it starting in the rural South and then having its own issue as it develops in the urban areas. Now, I spoke about this before when I believe I spoke about this before, but I'll just give you an update, especially when I speak about blues ecology and the plantation complex. The early civil rights activists were labor specific. I did speak to you all about this. They were labor specific. They were fighting for resources and the proper pay, right? What ends up happening is peace. What ends up happening is they're coerced by one particular person, which would be Bobby Kennedy, for them to start talking about voting, which was an urban issue, not a rural issue, because the rural folks were still fighting about land. Okay, so now what does that have to do with anything? And again, this is one of the reasons why I'm showing you an image that is considered more urban, because there are these issues on both the rural and the urban, right? The backwoods church and what could be considered the AME, right? But they do intersect. So now when we talk about blues environment, which is pretty much our show today, blues environment and blues and class critique, I want to give you some definitions. Okay. So now the first definition would be, what is blues environment? Okay. So when I say blues environment, we're talking about physical surroundings, but we're also talking about more than just physical surroundings. Okay. I would like you all to chime in. You know, I don't like just talking at you. I like for folk to participate. Okay. But when we're talking about blues environment, yes, we are talking about the physical surrounding, but it's also the total world. A blues song, a blues performance, a blues performer, a blues culture, a blues tradition, a blues engagement, a blues plate of food emerges from. So now, when we're speaking of environment, and listen, for me, environment and ecology go hand in hand. Now, on the ground level, a lot of folk don't use that term. I'm going to throw the term around a bit, okay? Because what one of our main objectives is to be able to be an incubator for communal vernacular, vocabulary, and engagement, and the academics. So then the things that the folk in the community, and I try not to use that word too much because that word is overused and it gets a bit not only just diluted, but it's ambiguous. The folk group, the people from the neighborhood, the family, the area, whatever you want to call it, the terminologies and engagements they use, and the titles they give their engagement is not necessarily what the academy utilizes. The academy used to come in and be like, well, this is what you all are doing. Okay. And that's not really how it should work. That is not how it really works too much anymore. Right. And with that, we want to be clear to honor the fact that the folk on the ground dictates what it is, how it is, what it means. Okay. So now, with that being said, getting back to it. So what emerges, or what is it emerging that we're looking at? We're looking at labor. We're looking at land. We're looking at law. We're looking at weather. We're looking at race. We're looking at class. We're looking at education. We're looking at poverty and the lack of education. Then we're also looking at the the type of education. All right, hold on. I gotta look at my folks when I say this one. Now I'm going to put the image back up for those who are just tuning in. When it replays, you'll understand why I'm using that image. But when we talk about education, right, or the lack thereof, we also have to speak about what education are we talking about? Whose education? And when I say whose education, whose educational structure, whose quote unquote curriculum or curricula, who, um, yeah, I said system, right? I always mention this brother, and you know what? I need to give him a holler. Terry Harmonica Bean, very deep brother. If y'all have not heard his music, you need to. Coming out of North Hill, Mississippi, but he speaks about the teaching coming from grandma, grandpa, compared to the teaching coming from Western Academy, what it means and how it affects, right? And the teaching that comes from grandpa and grandma, that's our tribal teaching. That is our bloodline teaching. That is our communal teaching. That is our kinfolk engagement. That is, excuse me, that trumps everything. But to be in the broader world, yes, the other one is just as important, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. In the broader world, both help. The other one is just as important, right? Well, the other one is important, but I personally believe the in the tribal that determines who one is, or at least one knows where they're coming from, right? So that's very important to understand when we talk about blues environment and we're talking about the world a blues song or performance or what have you comes from. All these things are important. Okay, whether it's the street corner or the shotgun shack, whether it's the projects or plantation, right? See, what I'm getting at is the blues environment is shaped by these systems. There's something called the plantation economy. There's Jim Crow segregation. There's the prison pipeline and today's exploitative labor markets. This is the blues environment. And I feel I need to share with you all what the blues environment is. So then when we discuss this and have these songs, when I give you these lyrics, we know what environment we're talking about. Okay. It's hostile, but it's also creative because black folk made music in spite of and in response to it in a lot of cases. Now, we have to also remember everything is not just so uh, deep. All right. It is also a response of survival for an economy. I know how to pick this guitar and sing, so I'm going to make a lane for myself. You know, does it always work that, I mean, and when I say does it always work that way, um, there are a lot of examples where the blues um, doesn't pay as a performer. You know, I'm thinking about a story that was in Why I Hate the Blues by Brian Forster. Okay, so that environment lives in the sound, right? It lives in the train whistle. It lives in the field holler. It lives in the tremble in the voices. It lives in your Escalade, whatever you drive in today. So to understand the blues, you have to understand the environment it comes from. Also remember that it migrated and moved from its environment in some families and tribes. The root still comes from, but then when it gets to, it morphs into, right? Which again, why we have this image of the young brother in the urban setting. Okay. The blues doesn't just describe that or any other world. It is a cinematic sensory testimony. Okay. So now as we talk about that, we're going to get into more blues ecology like landscape, soundscape, and things of that nature. But I want to get into some of these songs, even though I cannot play it yet. But guess what? We will be playing it soon because this segment explores how blues songs function and impact. And now we're talking about the Jim Crow era. We're talking about labor union and strikes, and think about the great debaters, and think about Denzel's character going down talking to the farmers, and he was considered a communist. Okay, so now before we go into these two gentlemen, I thought I had a picture of my lady. If you want me to get a picture of her, I'll grab one, but I think for time's sake, I'm going to keep them up and I'm just going to go through it because we're going to speak first about Bessie Smith's Blackwater Blues, who Big Bill Bronzy also did a rendition. Okay. Now, one of the amazing folklores of this song, a lot of people said that Bessie wrote the song about the devastating Mississippi River flood of 1927. However, the Library of Congress says that she wrote it about the Cumberland River flood in Nashville a year prior. Okay. But either way, it discusses the impact on the Black community. The idea of desolation, displacement, hardship. Okay, highlighting vulnerability of Black folk in both environmental disaster and social injustice. So let me read a couple of these lyrics to y'all. All right. That's right. What's happening, Miss Shannon? You know, Miss Shannon also has a great piece in the new issue. So I'm reading. When it rained 5 days and the sky turned dark as night. Don't get me start singing like Big Bill Bronzy. When it rained 5 days and the sky turned dark as night, then troubles taking place in the lowlands at night. I woke up this morning, can't even get out of my door. I woke up this morning, can't even get out of my door. There's enough trouble to make a poor girl wonder where's she gonna go. Then they rowed a little boat about 5 miles across the pond. Then they rowed a little boat about 5 miles across the pond. I packed all my clothes, threw them in, and they rowed me along. Man, there's another good brother, great musician, great historian, um, brother Bruce, and I had the opportunity to interview him, right? Brother Bruce Sunpie Barnes, zydeco player, harmonica player, singer, historian. I had the opportunity to interview him, and he spoke about how his father or grandfather was in that storm because he was working on the levee. I think about these things, first person experience when I am listening to these songs when I'm doing what I do. Like I was that I'm reading these lyrics here. I'm thinking about Katrina, right? A lot of my family lost homes and things of this nature. So when it thunders and lightning and the wind begins to blow, when it thunders and lightning and the winds begin to blow, there's thousands of people ain't got no place to go. Oh my goodness. And I went and stood up on some high old lonesome hill, and I stood up on some high old lonesome hill, then looked down on the house where I used to live. Backwater blues done called me to pack my things and go. I can't move no more. Whoo! So I have some questions. I want to know what y'all are thinking. Just with this, what the natural disasters reveal about economic and racial inequities? And can you really get a sense of that from that one song? Now I know for me, again, thinking about the multiple instances, and I'm not saying no other race or community felt this. Lord knows Asheville was hit hard, and what happened there, excuse me, not so long ago. But when I think of Katrina, when I think of the Florida, Mississippi, when I think of the Cumberland River flood in Tennessee, when black communities, a lot of times, when I say help the least, they're help the least because there's a lot of times those communities, they didn't use this word back then. This is like a word they've been using the last 20 years, 10, 20 years. They become gentrified, right? A lot of people were arrested, beaten, right? So, what do you think, or in what ways does Bessie preserve, highlight, present communal memory? Because we speak about memory like, oh, well, this is about memory. Raise taxes 1,000%. 1,000%. So environmental disasters in black communities ultimately, in a lot of cases, functions like urban renewal. This is a way they can get people up out of there. Yeah, I'm making a blanket statement. This is just based off uh, different researches. So, in what way does Bessie Smith, the song, preserve, conserve, raise awareness, highlights, presents communal memory, because again, when we're speaking about blues as a traditional vessel, it is also a historic vessel, intangible, tangible vessel. It moves with us, but then it also moves when we're moved on. Give you guys a couple of minutes to see if you would like to answer. Remember, Sonic Archive of Black American Life equals the blues. I'll also say, since we're speaking of cultural memory. All right, so, and again, please chime in and answer. I don't want this one way. It's a two-way conversation. So what Bessie does with this song, and I would implore you to go check out Big Bill Broonzy's version of the song, and he also pays homage to Bessie as he begins, and says, "This is how we used to do it back in the old days." She gives voice to the flood's trauma. "1,000% peace. Thank you for coming back." 1,000%. 1,000% it is. So Bessie gives, and remember, I'm looking at my notes. So she gives voice to the flood's trauma. She depicts what is going on and relates the feeling of someone not looking from the outside or someone repeating a story passed on, but experiencing. This is a first-hand account, right? But it's a first-hand account, a personal narrative that reflects and or morphs into a collective story, a shared story. So here is where I could make a strong case, me personally, and y'all drop a line and tell me what y'all think, where blues is folk music, music of the folk. Now, the I guess technical definition is songs created by the people collectively. But I'm meaning in regards here, how this narrative, this song embodies community, communal trauma, or whatever emotion they were feeling at that time, right? Which I would believe it's a folk song. But now that's folklore and folk song, right? Black folk music, what I call it, which it does. You got to hear. You got to hear my song called "Folk Belief Blues." You'll hear it soon. Um, she tells the story about how people are losing their homes. She's telling the story about, and again, I don't want to keep bringing up Katrina, but as I was reading these lyrics, that's what I thought about, you know. And I think it's induced in sensory, oral, AURAL, as she describes a sensed, when I say sensed, You hear thunder, you hear thunder, you see lightning, but you hear thunder, you know. And then when listening to it, I can sense, feel the event. So now, before we move on to the next song, how do floods become folklore? And that's kind of a simple question because we can even think about how some people think the flood of the Bible is folklore and or legend, right? And so as you're typing your answer, I'll say through the songs, sermons, and stories, the flood is not just water, right? It's a character. It could even be a motif as some in some cases, but it's a character. The flood is part of the story. The flood does something. The flood is a monster, even, right? I mean, and here's a couple of questions I would like you all to walk away with and think about. What do natural disasters reveal about economic and racial inequities and inequalities? Okay. Yes, absolutely. 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 All right, we're going to go to the next song. We're going to talk about, first and foremost, another backwater blues song, Backwater at Blytheville, Backwater. This is Charlie Patton's High Water Everywhere, which delivers the firsthand sonic document. And this one is about the flood of 1927 in Mississippi. Okay. That is so true. So now we have now I don't want to go too far to the left, but it does reveal the worst infrastructure. I was talking to my brother, a very, very groovy blues musician and deep brother, spiritual and a historian in his own right. And when I say in his own right, I don't know if he fancies himself as such, but he did let me know that a recent tornado storm definitely exposed the lack of updated infrastructure, right? Now, when we think about the revealing of infrastructure, and see, this goes back to the plantation complex, which pitted poor blacks and poor whites, or farming blacks and farming whites, and everyone in between against each other, held a carrot to one and disenfranchised another because both poor groups are in the worst infrastructured areas, right? Okay. You know, I didn't mean to get on my high horse. I will talk about that all day, right? Um, so How Water Everywhere is a first-hand sonic document of actually the Mississippi flood. I love the idea of it being what I call a sonic document, because now we're dancing the line between not just folklore but ethnomusicology, right? Or echo musicology. I wouldn't say that I'm in the complete place to break those things down, but I will say, as a blues person and a blues performer, and I guess I'm an academic at some sort. when we listen to these songs, they are sonic documentations, sensory documentations. What I've always called, even before going in back to the academy, I always called it oral and oral depictions of the blues people. I've always said that. I've even gotten to debates with good friends. What do you mean oral and oral? It's not oral. I mean, it's not AURL, it's ORL. I said, no, it's both. It is both. Yeah, did you hear Jerron's latest album? Beautiful album, beautiful album. Okay. So now, the one thing I love about Charlie Patton, there's some and Son House. A lot of songwriters find that album and listen to it. It's Smithsonian Folkways release. A lot of songwriters love the idea of extreme metaphors. Now, when it comes to the blues and black traditional music, we have to remember, hell, when it comes to writing in conversation vernacular, if you remember, W.E.B. Du Bois talks about double consciousness. We always talk about code switching. So then when you think about the songs also always have multiple meanings for multiple reasons, right? However, even in that context, cats like Charlie Patton and Son House still gives you a how can I word this? Raw, urgent, and direct messaging. So even if they're saying my old lady treated me bad, but they were talking about their boss, there's the same emotion and feeling, the same directness is there. So you do get the message without having to try to feel, oh, that's so poetic. No, they're not thinking about, well, I don't know. Let me rephrase that. I don't know what these men were thinking about because I wasn't there. But what I receive listening, and I'll say the same thing about who sits behind me, Memphis Minnie. What I receive when I listen to their music, I don't think they were thinking about being poetic, even though it was poetic. I think they were thinking about, as Karis one once said, getting the message out with demeanor. So now I'm gonna, and in doing that, Patton confronts the flood directly. He's naming, he's documenting, preserving memories. So let's get to some of these lyrics. Backwater at Blytheville, back up all around, backwater at Blytheville, done took Joyner Town. I hope I'm not messing up these names, okay? The water was rising up at my friend's door. It puts us somewhere, right? Puts us somewhere, okay? And not just anywhere. His homie's door. The water rising up at my friend's door. The man said to his woman folk. The man said to his, excuse me, I made a mistake. This is very important. He didn't say to his woman folk. He said to his women folk. So the reason why I have to make that distinction, because that's plural. So the man is talking to his tribe. The man said to his women folk, Lord, we'd better go. The water was rising, got up in my bed. Lord, the water was rolling, got up in my bed. The water is up in their bed. Everybody's bed ain't on the floor. And even if it's on the floor, that's really high. Okay. I thought I would take a trip, Lord, out on the big ice sled. Oh, I can hear, Lord, Lord, water upon my door. You know what I mean. Look at here. I hear the ice, Lord, Lord, was sinking down. I couldn't get no boats there. Marion City was gone down. Woo. So high the water was rising, our men sinking down. I think this is the flood that Brother Sun Pai was talking about, that his grandfather or father was working the levee when this happened. I was able to interview the good brother uh, from a contract I received from South Arts, surveying the Delta region. Um, and it was 50 men and children come to sink and drown. Woo, woo. Oh Lord, the women and grown men drown. Oh, women and children sinking down. Lord have mercy. I couldn't see nobody home, and wasn't no one to be found. Jesus, Lord. You know what? You know, it's ironic you say that, because the blues feels like scripture in some. Well, it feels like scripture to me. You know, and I need to do a. I've I've done episodes about hoodoo and Pentecost and blues and spirituals, but we really need to discuss. I don't say address, but we really need to discuss the idea that a lot of the men and women in the Bible were secular people being called by the Most High to do extraordinary things. So now, when you think about the blues, let me put my homie's statement back up. When you think about blues lyrics sounding like scripture, and everyone says, well, these two things don't live together because the blues is secular. Hold on, I'll take the picture down for a minute. I'll put it back up. But I got to look at my peoples. What I'm saying is, when we think about the blues being secular and not belonging in the church, we also have to remember that God called a lot of folk that was secular. What was it? Rahab the harlot, right? Saul killed Christians. He was a murderer. He killed Christians. So when we think about the blues as it pertains to supernatural and spirituality and scripture, and when we think about the blues, for some people not being of the cloth, well, there was a lot of people not of the cloth called and told the stories of their supernatural experience as they were called, right? So I say all this to say, when I'm thinking about the blues, when I'm experiencing the blues, when I'm writing or singing the blues, it's coming from a place of where sometimes non-spiritual people find their connection to spirituality, because we're singing about earthly woes, but who else are you talking to? In some cases, because when we think about the Bible, they're talking about earthly situations in some cases, right? That's right. He sure did. He sure did. And I'll also go on to say, it wasn't just Thomas Dorsey. Where were these musicians playing? Right? Once they, and remember, the juke and the church in some cases were the same building, the same landscape. If it was frolics and ring shouts, same area, because so when we think about now blues and sacred music being the same, we have to remember that in some cases, the musician playing playing and singing Saturday night may end up being a musician inside the church Sunday morning. You know, and Lord knows I love talking about that. But wait, we got to get back to the lyrics, and I want to go into because I want to go into uh, Blind Lemon Jefferson's dry Southern blues, right? which offers a surreal reflection of environmental landscape. And now I mentioned soundscape and landscape as the blues ecology, right? We're going to talk about that uh, possibly after I good sister Nia, what's happening with you? That's right. And that's what the slave seculars come from. Y'all go back and you can watch all these things are up. That's right. And y'all need to check out Sonic Blackness. If y'all hold on, let me find this real quick. Hold on. Once I find this, then I'll get back to it. Uh, I need y'all. Hey, what's up, Don? What's going on, young man? I need y'all to go check out my sister. All right. The Black Connection, Sonic Blackness. All right. So now, Dry Southern Blues again offers a surreal reflection of environmental collapse. Now, I want, matter of fact, before I get into that, I was going to wait, but I want to define. My phone is going off. Everything live. That's why I don't dress up. Sorry. I want to define soundscape, landscape, and then we're going to keep pushing this term blues ecology because I want y'all to understand what that is. Okay? And soon we're going to do blues is black history, which is what all of this is, right? So now, soundscape, when we talk of landscape and blues ecology, when we talk about blues ecology, good folk, we're talking about how black folks live in, respond to, and remember the land through sound. What's happening, Don? Welcome to the show if you haven't been here already, all right? Let me repeat that. When we're talking about blues ecology, just in case y'all didn't know, it's right there at the bottom of the screen. Blues ecology, we are talking about how blues people, aka blues people, aka black folks live in, respond to, and remember the land through sound. Okay? Oh, no, 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 no. We're not finished. We just started. Uh, uh, uh. Okay? So a landscape isn't just dirt and trees. It's not just grass and gardens, but it's memory. Okay? Landscape is memory and is interdimensional because on that one landscape, multiple generations of blues people have engaged our agreed upon culture, real expression, and so forth, right? So it's where labor happened and is happening. It is where floods came before, I don't want to evoke that. It is where families moved and were moved from, right? It is the delta, it is the back roads, it is the levees, it's the juke joints, but it's also the hill country, right? Now, the delta is what, 9 or 12 states? Indian country, Turtle Island, but we're also talking about what becomes urban communities, right? Because there's blues memory through song in urban spaces. How so? Well, me personally, my grandparents coming from the South with the migration, my parents, part of that migration, bringing their blues ecology, roots of the dirty South, to urban environments. My blues environment begins on concrete, with these same cultural agreements. Does that make sense? So I want to make sure that you all know it is not just in the one place, it is born in this place. And to be clear, when I speak about me personally, I speak about Louisiana and Mississippi. Okay. But when I speak about it in general, I'm talking about the entire South and then the entire Turtle Island. Okay. So this is struggle and survival carved into these landscapes, which are the places I'm discussing. Right? Soundscape is how those places that I just mentioned sound. Ooh. That is right. And you got to be, I'm going to tell you right now, I interviewed Chris Thomas King. He is not going to agree with your statement because he and a lot of folk, and you got to read his book, say that the blues starts in New Orleans, in Louisiana. We'll talk about that later. All right? So soundscape is how those places sound. The moan of the people, the moan and the whistle and the holler of the train, the rustle of the cane fields, sugar cane, that's Louisiana, cotton, that's Mississippi, right? The clapping of the hand, the preacher's shout, the silence of hunger. But let's talk about the clapping of the hand and the preacher's shout. Now, I'm going to put this picture back up, but I'm going to take it down so I can look at my peoples, my tribe real quick, right? The clapping of the hand, the preacher's shout. So for me, even in Northeast, even with West Indian descended pastors and Southern Black American descended pastors, they all sound the same because they all hooting, hollering like they're coming out Louisiana, Mississippi. See what I'm saying? That's how the blues people sound in these landscapes, but it also how it moves, because you can go deep down in the woods. Some people call it the sticks, the backwoods, the early days of frolicking and ring shouts and all these places, and hear it. And then today you'll hear it possibly in a different structure in the same place, possibly in a different place in a new structure. You see what I'm saying? That's right. Foot stomping. So I'm gonna put that picture back up and get back to it. But I had to bring that home. We are talking about blues ecology. Okay. So the soundscape is the world translated into rhythm, vibration, and voice. Soundscape is the world translated into rhythm, vibration, and voice, but specifically to and through the blues people, the Black American experience, the Afro-Indigenous experience, okay? So now, in the blues, we're talking blues ecology still. Landscape and soundscape come together. Okay? It tells us where we are, it tells us where we've been, it hints to where we're going, but it also tells us and reminds us what it feels like and what it felt like. You understand what I'm saying? Oh yeah, oh yeah. So this blues ecology, this is the blues ecology. It is how we archive memory with melody. Okay? This is blues ecology. And this blues ecology with landscape and soundscape is how we archive memory with melody, how we carry our land with us, how we carry our history with us, how we carry our hurt, but how we carry our love and our happiness. It's not just about being downtrodden. That's not the only part of the blues. We have never been one dimensional, monolithic people. Okay? Just keep that in mind. And we carry land with us today, particularly from being removed from our own lands. It sure does. It sure does. Now I'm gonna get back to the Blind Lemon song, but I had to give you a definition of landscape, soundscape as it pertains to blues ecology. But I want you to understand that the blues turns geography into exactly, exactly. Okay. So now, with that being said, thinking about dry Southern blues from Blind Lemon Jefferson and the reflection of environmental collapse, drought, heat, hopelessness, with the backdrop of a, I guess you could say, a haunting guitar, because we know Blind Lemon is for real. His imaginary or imagery, I should say imagery instead of imaginary. His imagery reflects Black ecological despair, excuse me, particularly in the Jim Crow South. So he's transforming landscape into a symbolic of suffrage. Mm. Okay, so now this is from 1926. Okay, this is from 1926. Okay, and like most, Ray Charles. Yes, I didn't know who Ray Chapples was. Ray Charles. That's right. Um, this song is written and presented in stanzas. My mind leads me to a trip down south. My mind leads me to a trip down south. Take a trip down south and stop at Fat Mouth's house. One train's at the depot with the red and blue lights behind. I said, one train's at the depot with the red and blue lights behind. Well, the blue lights, the blues, mm-mm-mm. The red lights, the worried mind. I hate to tell you, sugar, it tain't nobody there. I hate to tell you, sugar, it tain't nobody there. If a man stay here, he'll stay most anywhere. What'd you get from that? If a man stay here, he will stay most anywhere. What you think that means? I got up this morning rambling from my shoes, Don't get me started about this particular verse. I got up this morning rambling for my shoes. The little woman said to me, it's all the world weary blues. Uncle Sam was no woman, but didn't he draft your man? That's the question now. Uncle Sam was no woman, but didn't he draft your man? Tell me, them good looking women's on the borders raising sand. Well, women's on the border drinking over the waters true. Well, women on the borders drinking over the water true. I wish Uncle Sam would hurry up and pay these soldiers off. See, I'm coming. No, I'm sorry. See, upcoming country shows. Get tickets for your favorite artists you might also like. So, what are we talking about? What does he talk about? How do the song and now without just not just both songs, what is Blind Lemon talking about first and foremost? There's a few things going on in Blind Lemon's song. He talk about getting drafted. He talk about trying to get on the damn train. He talking about if you would live in the South, you live just about anywhere. That's what really caught me. If you would live in the South, you just about live anywhere. What is he trying to say? Oh, no, I'm trying to give you all time. I want to play it, but I can't. But guess what? I will be playing these songs soon. Right? Hmm? Now, this is a well known example of country blues, right? What y'all thinking? Hmm? That's right. Home is home, even if it's the Delta. Some people have a problem with it, some people don't. So, how do both songs reflect different environmental crises? Is so before we speak about both songs, because we know the crises coming from Charlie Patton. What is the crises that Blind Lemon is talking about? Because Blind Lemon Jefferson, which is why I put it here, because he leads us into the next segment, which is blues and class critique, right? 1000%. 1000%. 1000%. That's also environmental suffrage, being drafted. That's also an environmental crisis, being drafted. That is also environmental trauma. Your woman suffering because you were drafted. That's right. So now with that, ooh, we're gonna have to go on to Mr. Ledbetter. Now, before we get to Mr. Ledbetter, I should have showed you about my guy, John Wesley Work, because I like talking about John Wesley Work. And this segment is blues and class critique. And we're gonna highlight bourgeois blues, right? Which is a political document or political statement, if you will, right? But I think of John Wesley Work because John Wesley Work clearly made a statement that was, if not political, it was a critique on social class. When he says his distinction between the people of the blues and the people of the church, the people of the blues were less educated in a constant state of depression, right? Where the people of the cloth or of the church, he says, are forward thinking folk who, I mean, were educated. Um, so now when you think of bourgeoisie blues by Leadbelly, which is a critique of class, right? Could he be saying the same thing, but just from the other side of the fence? John Wesley Work was able to live amongst the natives, but he was a third, fourth generation academic, right? Leadbelly did hard time. He was amongst the natives a lot. That and he also was an advocate in the fight against labor exploitation. Okay. So I just took a drink from what we call happy coffee. My wife sells the mushroom coffee. Get at me if you want to get some. It is healthy. It helps your mind, brain. It helps your oxygen, blood flow, and it makes you happy. So let's go over bourgeoisie blues. I'm gonna read these lyrics, and I want y'all to chime in. Okay. Me and my wife run all over town, and everywhere we go, you know something. Okay, you know what? I'll share this with y'all after I read the lyrics because I didn't want to read before this idea of blues ecology in class from the plantation to the prison pipeline. But I will read that to y'all after this. And when I say read it to you, we'll discuss it. But I have some notes jotted down that I thought was significant that you all would want to share and live, right? 1000%. I agree with you. I agree with you. Again, remember the book I talked about last week, I believe? The Warmth of the Other Sun. There were there were upper echelon, so upper middle class blacks that did not, they acted as if they did not want to at least publicly endorse it. But yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you on that. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna read it. I agree with you. I'm gonna read these lyrics, and then we're going to talk. We're going to talk a bit about it. Okay. Here we go. And everywhere we go, me and my wife run all over town. And everywhere we go, the people would turn us down. Lord, in a bourgeois town, it's a bourgeois town. I got the bourgeois blues. Going to spread the news all around. Me and my wife were standing upstairs. I heard the white man saying, I don't want no N-words up there. So now, let me just be clear before I finish reading this. Leadbelly pulled no punches. He was a poet, but he was very candid. He was a candid individual. So I'm using the term N-word, but he says it in the song and it's spelt out here, okay? And any other racial epithet that I come across, more than likely, I will not, okay? All right. Lord, he a bourgeois man, bourgeois town. I got the bourgeois blues, gonna spread the news all around. Home of the brave. Now peep this. Home of the brave, land of the free. I don't want to be mistreated by no bourgeoisie. Lord, in the bourgeois town, the bourgeois town. I got the bourgeois blues. I'm going to spread the news all around. Then he goes into the next verse. Me and my wife went all over town. And where we go, the colored people turned us down. Uh-oh. He said, what? See, you heard the first verse, and in the first verse, he was explaining how white folk looked at black folk, him and his wife. Now he switched up, and y'all wasn't expecting. We're going to talk about this because this goes back to my statement that when John Wesley Work called to task or raised the point or made a class distinction between the people of the blues and the people of the cloth. But this also goes back to a book that I've been talking to you all about every time we meet. I've been trying to remember this book. I think it's called Soul Food. I just want to be clear. I'm going to tell y'all right now, and then I get back to reading this. I got a little excited. Uh, bu- 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 bu. Is this what I think it is? Nope, that's not it. I think this is it right here. Nope. Nope. Give me 2 seconds, y'all. We get back to it. There we go. Okay. I will. Okay. I found it. I've been looking for this. I've been looking for it. Hold on 1 second. Because now I got to go through all types of codes and stuff to get to it. But I'm going to get to it and then I'm going to get back to reading these lyrics. Because this is exciting to me, as y'all know. Because that you know, I always say how my homie Mr. Walto say, you want the truth, listen to the blues songs. It's all in it. All right, so let me get to this. Then I'll get back to this. Absolutely, 1,000%, 1,000%. In this bourgeois town, classism, social blues, colorism. It's a bourgeois town. I got the bourgeois blues. I'm going to spread the news all around town. The white folks in Washington, they know how to call a man an N-word just to see him bow. Lord, it's the bourgeois town. The bourgeois town. I got the bourgeois blues. I'm going to spread the news all around. I tell all the colored folks to listen to me. Don't try to find you no home in Washington, D.C., because it's a bourgeois town. The bourgeois town. I got the bourgeois blues, and I'm going to spread the news. There's so much being said here. Now, let me see how I can do this. I want to. Okay, I'm gonna put the name of the book. Well, the name of the chapter and the name of the chapter and the writer of the chapter, and I'll also put the abstract in here. This book is very important. Who the hell is this? Get out of here. You guys want to see this book I just posted? Okay, by Tracy and Poe, because what she's talking about is the black migrants from the South going to a bourgeois town. Now, it's more than just that. It is more than just that. It is the creation of soul food and how it became a Jesus, a landmark corner of Black American everything. but you got to understand, and how I'm connecting it to this song Bourgeois Blues. When the migrants, the Southern Black migrants migrated from the South to the Midwest, I believe that is right, North Midwest, Chicago, they were not welcomed by the bourgeois blacks or the bourgeois whites. The assimilated communities had their own relationships with each other. And the migrants came messing up this relationship. I believe I believe the idea and the phrase "they all look alike, it don't matter" comes from this instance. Because what she's explaining is the Southern migrants, the Black folk of the South, came to Chicago with their Southern ways. And when I say this, please, I'm not judging. I'm just. I'm giving you context of the story and how the folk was received, not what the author may be saying or what I believe, but how they were received. See, at the time of their arrival to Chicago, the assimilated Negroes and the assimilated whites lived, moved, and operated a particular way within the culture and structure of that moment. The Southern Black migrants had a tradition and a behavior. This goes back to John Wesley work, not just being delusional or not just uh, uh, being in a state of depression, but how they behaved in public and what they did, how they spoke, what they did on their leisure, how they sat outside, how they sat on the corner eating watermelon. All these different things are explained in the book. I mean, in the chapter, right? So the way the Southern migrants behaved in this quote unquote bourgeois town of Chicago, it created beef, conflict between the assimilated Negro and assimilated white, the bourgeois white, and the bourgeois black. Now, just to close the story about this particular book, what the author was explaining was how soul food was created. It wasn't necessarily called that at the time. Malcolm X gives it the name. It's right. No, it's a chapter in the book. You're right, CC. It's a chapter in the book. The book is called Food in the USA, I believe. Or Food. That's the book is called Food in, yeah. The book is called Food in the USA. And this is a chapter of that book. If I did not say that, forgive me. Okay? The name of the book is Food in the USA. This is a chapter of the book, right? So now, what or article? How we So thank you for that. If I did not mention that or make that clear, thank you for that. So, but what ultimately what our author is saying is all these things were happening. Bourgeois blues, the bourgeois blacks and the bourgeois whites did not take to the southern black migrants to the point it caused conflict between the two of them. And what ends up happening is they're just like, well, we don't want any blacks anywhere. We can't tell y'all apart, right? But ultimately, their food tradition carves them a space in this region. And this is the birth of soul food, Southern cuisine, right? I understand what you mean by that. I definitely understand what you mean by that. I definitely understand what you mean by that. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. That is right. They absolutely were. So now, with that being said, going back to Lead Belly's song Bourgeois Blues, and then him speaking to both, or let me rephrase that, speaking about both white and black bourgeois people, the question would then become, so who is he talking about when he says colored people don't go there? I would imagine he's talking to the migrants because that's who he would be spending majority of his time with. So now let me ask y'all, and you pretty much saying this, but how did he express? Well, we know how he expressed it. This is not a good question. I'm sorry, but the reality is that with, with, with the blues, what do you get from his expression of a class critique in the blues? Also, keep something in mind. Do y'all know most people shouldn't know, but Lead Belly was not considered a blues musician. He was a folk singer. He's an old time singer, right? String music and things of this nature. He learned, and this goes back to Chris Thomas King's um, assertion that blues starts in Storyville in New Orleans. Lead Belly learns the blues in New Orleans. I can't think of the woman's name, but Lead Belly learns the blues there. I'll look her name up right now. Uh, and here's the irony, right? I'm looking it up because I don't remember her name. I'll be honest with you, right? But they're saying Mamie Smith is the first woman to sing the blues. They're saying Ma Rainey is the first to sing the blues, all this stuff. But what's ironic is there is evidence that all these women found themselves in Storyville learning how to sing this style of music from Mamie Des Dunes, I believe you say her name. I'll give you her name right now, y'all, so y'all know, okay? And I want y'all to look her up. She's considered The very first person to sing the blues. Okay. Now, with that being said, Jelly Roll Martin, she's an alleged piano player, and Jelly Roll Martin, amongst another black musician out of this area and era, goes to her to learn how to play the piano and blues. Jelly Roll Martin moved or hung around her to learn. The irony of this statement is when asked about her, they both said she was not much of a piano player. However, it is documented that she may be the very first person to sing the blues as we know it. And it comes out of the brothel she worked in Storyville. And I'm bring her up because I'm believing I could be wrong. Anyone who knows this, please let me know. Anyone who knows this, please let me know. I'm believing she is the woman who introduces the blues to Leadbelly. And she says to him, you can't be playing that old time music. This is what you need to be playing. Allegedly. Okay. So now I bring all of that up because these would be the people that would be frowning upon the bourgeois blacks and the bourgeois whites, the lead bellies. Des Dooms is her name. Okay. And again, Leadbelly uses blues, someone who's not necessarily a blues musician, but he can play anything, but he uses blues to position and critique a societal and environmental attack because he clearly says in the song, don't move to Washington, D.C., because they will call a man the N word just to see him bow. I want to take a moment to talk to y'all about this. Uh, so I have my notes. I'm gonna look at my notes because I want you all to, again, as I'm disseminating, as I'm sharing with you this concept I've been working out, blues ecology. I want you all to see how we saw how, or better yet, we discussed how it functions in blues environment. We saw how it functions in landscape and soundscape. I want to share with you all how it functions in the idea of class. And then also this idea of from plantation to prison pipeline, right? She's from Storyville. Um, there's so there's just a there's a okay. Next week I will be, stay tuned because I have a good conversation with Chris Thomas King. Uh, that will be published uh, next Wednesday or Friday. Okay. And I just want, okay, yeah, here you go. You know, I like to show my people's stuff. So I interviewed Chris Thomas King, and it would be published either Wednesday or Friday. We speak a little bit about her. Okay. All right. See you Tuesday. Thanks for stopping by, Don. And in that, you'll learn a bit. Okay. But I want to give you a little bit about this blues ecology in class and plantation economy and prison pipeline and everything in between, okay? Because when, again, the blues ecology discusses, it's about blues people, black folk navigating hostile environments, okay? Both natural and man-made, okay? Let me say that again. The blues ecology is about blues people, black folks navigating hostile environments, natural environments, as well as man-made environments. Okay? And I'm just showing some images, okay? See, the plantation wasn't just a field, it was an ecological system of extraction. It was surveillance, it was control. Now, I will say, I've heard from many people, both sides, black, white, and everything in between, different different how do I say theories and feelings of and on and about plantation life, plantation industry, plantation complex, and everything else that goes along with it. But to my understanding, as it pertains to what we're talking about with the exploitation of black labor, his book was is I'm waiting for it. uh, it is an ecological system of extraction, surveillance, and control. Okay. And when slavery ended, that system did not disappear. And so now, when we speak about that, I always bring up, where's my guy? I just saw him. I literally just saw it. I got a lot of images here, and oh no, here we go. This is a very good book. Dr. Clyde Woods speaks to blues epistemology. Okay. So now we think about chain gang, sharecropping, convict leasings. We should also think about the prison pipeline because they're all extensions of the same plantation logic, number one, and they all function almost the same. And I mean, in my lifetime, I've seen chain gangs. And CC, I've seen it in Louisiana, in New Orleans. And I have to be honest, it was maybe 15, 20 men, and they were all black. Okay? So now, amongst everything else that we've been discussing, the blues also rises from here. Now, we also have to remember this is not just a blues as in music, but blues as in blues person, or even of the cloth, or even academic classical, because Solomon, you know who I mean when I say Solomon. Who do I mean when I say Solomon? Who do I mean when I say Solomon, y'all? Solomon Northup. That's how you say his name? Solomon Northup. That's how you say his name? He was a victim of the same thing. And he was an educated man who was respected by his peers, neighbors, and community, black, white, and everything in between. So when we say blues people, blues music, when we say uh, a plantation logic, and then we're also putting a critical lens as we articulate the idea of class within blues ecology. Here we have Solomon Northup, who's a highly educated man and a highly respected man. That's right. Thank you. Who fell victim to the very plantation system that I'm discussing in blues ecology. Getting back to bourgeois blues, Leadbelly is calling out a system that is described through all of these people in their various ways of expressing black traditional music, right? 1000% accurate. Bourgeois blues also exposes how race and class are tied up in geography, labor, and law. And this again goes back to the idea of the plantation system. Still, I guess in effect, I don't know. I don't want to. And we have that same. We have a similar struggle today. Underpaid black workers, overpoliced neighborhoods, and I mean, there's quite a few things we could talk about. Like they just like I don't want to use this word, but it was like the anniversary of George Floyd, right? Do you have we could discuss people's behaviors, but at the end of the day, right? So again, blues ecology is how we map oppression and survival across time through sound, always connecting to the land and how we remember the land, how we live on the land, cultivate the land. But memory is a very important part of it, considering were we not removed? Okay, good folks. I think we had a great discussion this evening. Let me see here. I want to tell you what next week is. So again, we went over blues environment. We spoke deeper about blues ecology and as it pertains to blues environment, landscape, soundscape. Then we spoke about blues and class critiques, through the lyrics. Soon, I will be able to play some of these songs, and I'll explain to you how that adjustment will happen, what you all need to do, and how we can get that rocking. And yes, I have to tell there's we work hard, to try to provide this information. So I'll always ask for if you appreciate what's going on, this is how you show appreciation. Okay. The magazine will be sent out soon, and then I'll let y'all know how to order them. This is the thickest magazine we've made to date. Next week, what do we talk about next week? I want to tell y'all what we're talking about next week, all right? Next week, please join me as we'll be moving to module 2, if you will, of this series. And just to remind you all, the blues is Black Sonic Folklore. Okay. We'll be talking about folklore in Black music of today. Blues in Black music of today. Okay. Now, mind you, doing that does not negate or dismiss songs of yesteryear like we're discussing these last couple of weeks. Okay. Because it's all relative. So I appreciate y'all hanging out. Remember, just in case you did not see it, if you care to show your appreciation, this is how you do it. You can follow us or me on Instagram, Jack Dappa Blues Radio, the African American Folklorist. Every streaming space, you can get the replay of this. And we are about to make a move. When I say a move, we're about to be able to play music along with hey, I saw that. Thank you. I meant to tell you thank you. I saw that. Thank you. I did not send a thank you video yet. Yes, you did. And I got some good things happening. And you know what? Thank you, CC, for that. Y'all need to join the Patreon because we're about to get super busy and you're about to be part of some real fun stuff, okay? Thank you for that, CC. Congo Square, absolutely. All right, good folks. So next week, same blues time, same blues channel. Thank you for rocking with me again. If I miss anything, if you know something pertaining to what we discussed, share it. This is what the space is all about. And as we grow and do different other things, I will keep you all informed. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Look out for my interview with Chris Thomas King. That will be aired between Wednesday and Friday. Okay? And keep bluesing, keep learning, keep loving your family. And I'll talk to you about how you can, if you don't know, how we can help you all with the tools to document your people and where it can live. Okay? Talk to y'all soon. Enjoy your week.